Marketing is an integral part of any successful business. Regardless of how busy you are, and even if you're finding that you're not really in search of more work, I think marketing should always be part of any good strategic part of any business. I've read a whole bunch of books on marketing. Some of them were really, really good, some of them not so much. But today I want to share with you a book that I think was probably one of the best books I ever read on marketing. A couple of years ago, I attended a conference by David Ramsey, and one of the speakers there was Donald Miller. And Donald Miller's presentation was about marketing and how he looked at marketing. And what he presented actually blew my mind. I thought, this is phenomenal material. So much so that I ended up buying the book. So the book that I'm speaking of is Building a Storybrand by Donald Miller. And so what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what the content of this book is, to give you a little bit of an appetite for it and hopefully get you to buy it, because I think if you're going to be in business and you want to develop a good strategy where people are actually going to listen to you and care what you have to say, I think this book will go a long way in moving you in that direction. I'm sure you've had the experience many times where you're going to buy something and the vendor just talks, and you end up being just bored out of your mind and not feeling all that interested in buying what the guy is trying to sell because he's just boring you. How many times have you possibly done that to your clients? And I recognized that in myself early on in my career, is that sometimes I would spend too much time talking and failing to really relate what I was selling to what they wanted to buy. And I found that this book had a really captivating way of you putting the message in front of them and give you a whole different way of thinking. So I want to, again, share the high-level things mentioned in this book that I'm sure you're going to find is really possibly very different to the way you're currently looking at your current marketing strategy. One of the things that I found really interesting in Mr. Miller's book is how he talks about how many storylines have a similar composition to it. So he mentions that how many movies have you attended or books that you've read where it starts off with a hero, the person, the victim, who is the main character of the book or the movie. And in the movie, the main character now comes across a villain, a problem. So in the book, he often refers to the movie Star Wars that most people have seen, so I'm going to refer to that one too. So in the movie, we've got Luke Skywalker, who now has a problem, and a villain. And the villain obviously being Darth Vader, and the problem being the Death Star that's about to destroy the whole world. So now Luke has to overcome the villain along with the problem. And as with many good storylines, he meets a guide. And in this case, the guide is Yoda. So Yoda takes along the role of teaching a whole bunch of things to Luke Skywalker about how to overcome the villains of the world.
You are reckless.
Well, actually, what I should be saying is that the guide wasn't Yoda, but rather Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then eventually he meets Yoda, who is Obi-Wan Kenobi's mentor. Following all of these instructions, together they develop a plan. So the plan is to destroy the Death Star before it can destroy the universe. So for those of you who have seen the movie, it goes into this whole storyline about how they're going to destroy the Death Star. And so the plan is now being put into action. But what makes us want to listen or watch the movie to the end or read the book to the end is the conclusion, because we all understand that if they're successful, they will destroy the Death Star and everybody goes on to live another day. But failure will result in the Death Star now destroying the whole world, and therefore everybody dies. So there's tremendous contrast between a good ending and an awful ending, which is what has us read the story to the end. So at this point, you might be asking, so what does that have to do with marketing? Well, if you can look at marketing similarly to writing a good book. And so we're going to make some parallels between that story of Star Wars to your own marketing of your business. So the first thing you need to understand in the business sense is that the hero is not you. You are not the hero. The client who's approaching you with whatever problem is the hero. And so what you want to identify is what problem is it that the hero has, and the more clearly you can identify the villain or the problem, the better you will be able to market your business. So being in the accounting world, we were able to identify for our clients the villains that came up most often was CRA, and the problem being paying too much taxes, or the villains could also be the bank, with the problem being not having enough cash to pay for your bank loans. But as you can see, these problems or these villains were something that we were now called upon to help find a solution. So now when they came to see us, our role was to show them that we were the perfect guide. We were the perfect people to teach them and show them how to deal with the villain and the problem. In the book, it states very clearly how to do that. How do you demonstrate to the client that you are the perfect guide in every which way or form in how to deal with the villain and to deal with the problem? And then once you've convinced them that I am your perfect guide, then the next part of that book would be to come up with a plan. So this is where the book also shows how you put the plan into action. So again, as an accountant, I would usually make an effort to really determine who the villains are, what the problem is, and the next step is spend just enough time and information to convince the client that I am the perfect guide, the guy who can really provide them with a plan that will show them how to avoid death. So you come up with a plan and you demonstrate the plan to the client. Once the plan is clear, that is when the client will usually sign on. But part of getting them to sign on is to clearly demonstrate the impact of making whatever decision, because the decision they have is to not hire you or hire you. And the bigger the difference between success and failure, the bigger the chances that they're going to be willing to hire you, and also it will impact fees. So if you can clearly demonstrate that you are the perfect guide, that you have the perfect plan, and that the plan will lead to tremendous riches and success versus total failure and death, the bigger the difference between the two scenarios, the more you can charge for those services, and the more likely they are to hire you. Now, this is the premise of the whole book. And you may say, well, I get it. I can do this without reading the book. No. Because the book goes into a lot of details on how to do that properly and how to bring back the Storybrand into your business. And it gives so many examples that I found really helped me in developing that strategy for my businesses. So I suggest that this book will do a lot for that. But the other thing that I really liked about this book is it made the whole purpose of selling the services far more interesting. If you look at the cover of the page, one of the things it says is clarify your message so customers will listen. One of the things that I got out of the book is that it allowed me to put into words a message that was clear for the client to understand and made it easy for them to sign on. And I thought the process, the whole thought process of recognizing them as a hero, coming up with the problem, clearly identifying what it is, and the villain, showing who I was as a guide, providing them with the plan, and then finally showing them the possible results, made it so much easier to make every sale for every client that I came across. In the description of this video, there will be a link where you'll be able to read the reviews of this book and a little bit more information related to this book to make it an easier decision as to whether you want to buy it or not. So if any of you have already read this book, I would really be interested to know what your thoughts were on this book. Because like I said, for me, it was life-changing in the way I thought about marketing. But I'd like to get other people's thoughts. If any of you have read this book, what were your takeaways, what you liked about it, maybe even disliked about it? And if any of you are using the strategy talked about in the book, I would like to hear about any of you what you thought of it and how well it worked for you. And of course, if you found this video to be of any use to you, please click on the like button. And if you like more videos like this, please subscribe. I would really appreciate that.